again, it's Christina from Sunshine and Flora. I grow cut flowers in Northwest Iowa in Zone 5A, and in this video I wanted to share with you 10 things that I learned last year in my first year of flower farming. Now, even though I've been gardening for close to 20 years, growing cut flowers for flower farming is completely different than just having a flower garden, and boy did I learn a lot last year. So I thought it would be fun to put together a video to share some of the most important things that I learned. So before I get into my list, I'll give you just a little bit of a backstory on my garden. I am also a professional photographer and have been for 18 years, and so my garden is located downtown right next door to my photography studio. I have roughly 1/16 of an acre of growing space. Last year I had both cut flowers and vegetables in that space. This year I am devoting the entire area to just cut flowers. So last year I sold my cut flowers at 2 area farmers markets and also took custom orders, and it ended up to be a very busy summer for my flower farming and what I think was a very successful first year. But I want to grow my business this year, and so putting this list together is really helping me adapt and make changes for this year's garden. Now, my list of 10 things is kind of in the order of the growing season, and the first one, and probably one of the most important things that I learned last year, was grow more than you think you need. I quickly realized halfway through my growing season that I needed more flowers. In fact, I think I could have had double the flowers, and that is what I plan on having this year. Last year I did not do any farmers markets until the very beginning of July, and from July through September I had a pretty constant supply of flowers, but I definitely could have had more. I also was not expecting all the custom orders to come in like they did, and so that is where I was quickly realizing that I definitely could have had more flowers, especially fillers, but I will get to that as well. So number one, grow more than you need. So this year when I am starting all of my seeds, I'm going to be starting way more seeds than I have room for in my actual row growing space, because some of them won't germinate, but then I also have extra. It's better to have more than you think you need than less than you need. Number 2 on my list is keep a garden journal. I have kept a garden journal for the last few years, and in here I keep track of all of the plants that I grow every year, when I start the seeds, when I plant them in the ground, and when I start getting my very first blooms of the season. And this year especially, when I'm planning to plant double the flowers, this garden journal has been a very great resource for me to reference back to. I know exactly when, for example, I started all of my Lysianthus last year. I started them about 10 days earlier this year because I want to be able to plant them out sooner to get some blooms sooner. So I recommend keeping a garden journal because you can reference back to it every single year and then make adjustments from there. I also like to note my favorite varieties from the year and what varieties did not grow well, so I know that I don't want to grow those the following year. Number 3 is make sure that the varieties that you are growing are specifically for cut flowers. And I learned this with a couple of specific varieties last year. The first one being dahlias and the second one being pincushion flowers. Now, I quickly learned that the variety of pincushion flower that I was growing was not made for cut flowers. While it had really good height, the stems were pretty flimsy, and so I've learned that I'm just not even going to grow those this year. And last year when I was planting all of my dahlia tubers and ordering them, I was looking at the bloom size and mostly looking at what the bloom looked like and deciding if I wanted to plant that in the garden. I didn't really look at the plant height, so I had a few varieties of dahlias that were really short. I'm talking only 12 inches high. Well, those just don't work well for cut flower bouquets. So when you are looking at flowers that you want to plant in your cut flower garden, make sure that they are listed specifically for cut flowers. You want your stem length to be at least 18 inches high, and you want to make sure that they have a good vase life. And if you're ordering your seeds from companies such as Johnny's, that is always listed in the seed description. Number 4, make sure that you're growing flowers for each season. If you want to be able to start those early farmers markets, which around here they start the 1st of June, you want to make sure that you have enough early flowers, and then you also want to make sure you have enough flowers that last through the end of the season. So last year I had plenty of zinnias and celosia and dahlias, and all of those blooms tend to really take shape in July, August, and September. And so I had plenty of flowers going into those seasons. Now it was my earlier season blooms I did not have enough for. So I had a lot of snapdragons, I had some daisies, some echinacea, but I found that my earlier markets, such as the very beginning of July, I did not have enough to make a lot of bouquets. And so I ended up going out and foraging Queen Anne's lace and some other wildflower fillers. So this year I'm specifically paying attention to some of the cool flowers that can be planted out a lot earlier, such as rudbeckia and status, and I am starting extras so that I know that I have plenty of flowers at the beginning of the season and plenty of flowers to go through the end of the season. Another thing I'm also growing this year that I did not last year is tulip bulbs, and those will get me really early market bouquets to start my season off strong. Number 5, and this was a big one for me, grow fillers. I quickly learned last year at the very beginning of my season that I was not growing fillers. To make a really full market bouquet, you need more than just focal flowers. And so, like I mentioned in the last item on my list, I was going out early in the season and having to forage fillers. I don't want to have to do that this year because that takes so much extra time. So this year I am growing a few fillers that should get me through the entire season. I'm going to be growing a lot of status, a lot of yarrow. I'm also going to try growing some cress, and I'm going to be growing 3 different kinds of basil. So through all of those varieties, I should have fillers through the entire growing season to supplement the focal flowers in my bouquets so that I know that they look nice and full. Number 6, and this was another big thing that I learned last year, have all of your structural things done in the garden before you even start planting. Last year I decided, because it was my first year actually growing for market bouquets, that I wanted to restructure a few things in my garden. So before I started planting, I did get most of it done. I reformatted my pathways, I built my greenhouse, but I also decided that I wanted to put up a pergola in my area to create a little sitting area, and then also maybe to use for future things, such as bouquet bars, things like that. Well, my dad and I built it, and we did not get to putting that up until June. So that was in an area of the garden where all of my dahlia tubers were going. So some of my dahlia tubers I did not even get planted in the ground till the 3rd week of July, which is way too late. So I learned the lesson last year that you want to have all of your structural things done before you even start planting. So this year all of that will be done, and I will have all of the blooms for my cut flower bouquets when I am supposed to have them. Number 7, make sure to pinch your plants when necessary. One of the main plants that I pinched last year and was so glad that I did was snapdragons. Now when you plant a snapdragon plant in the ground, if you don't pinch it, it will grow, but it will grow straight up. It will give you one snapdragon bloom, and then when you cut that, your whole plant will have to start all over again to start branching for you to give you more blooms. Last year, before I even planted them out in the ground, they were still in their seed trays, I pinched my plants down. And when I planted them out into my garden, they immediately started branching, and I had sometimes up to 6 to 8 blooms per plant. So right away at the beginning of the season, I was getting multiple blooms per plant, and my snapdragon patch was so much more productive than it would have been if I wouldn't have pinched my plants. Another good plant to pinch is zinnias. You want to pinch your dahlia plants, and if you're not sure what plants to pinch, again, if you get your seeds from a company like Johnny's, if you read the back of your seed packet or the description on their website, it will tell you whether you need to pinch the plant or not. So make sure to watch that when you're starting your seeds in the spring. Number 8, make sure you succession plant and reuse your ground. One of the main crops that I was succession planting last year was sunflowers. Now, if you've grown sunflowers before, you know that they are a one and done. A sunflower seedling will grow one flower. Once you cut it off, it's done. You're gonna pull it out of the ground. So if you're not succession planting, that whole space in your garden where your sunflowers are growing is just going to be bare ground. So what I do with my sunflowers is I plant succession plantings of sunflowers throughout the entire season. So for example, if I'm starting to plant my sunflowers out the 1st of June, I'll do one planting. 2 weeks later, I'll do another planting. 2 weeks later, another planting, and so on. And then once those 1st of June sunflowers are harvested, I'll clear that spot and then do another planting. So last year I was planting sunflowers all the way up until the end of July, and sunflowers are usually a 60-day crop. That gave me sunflower blooms all the way into October, which was perfect because I did a big end of season market the end of September, and I had custom orders all the way into October. So make sure you're taking advantage of succession planting. Number 9, if you are doing 2 different price points for your market bouquets at a farmer's market, make sure that there is a very big difference between your bouquets. When I did my first couple markets last year at the beginning of the season, I had $10 bouquets and I had $15 bouquets. And the only difference in those bouquets that I was doing was making the $10 bouquet a little smaller and the $15 bouquet a little larger. Well, I quickly realized that when the clients came up to my market booth, they really didn't know what they wanted to buy off the bat, and they didn't really see a difference between the $10 and the $15 bouquet. So I quickly changed how I was doing my $10 bouquets and made them a one type of flower bouquet. So I made those throughout the season, mostly snapdragons. I used about 8 stems of snapdragons, marked those $10. My $15 bouquets were my mixed bouquets. So I was using filler, snapdragons, zinnias, sunflowers, lisianthus, dahlias, anything else I was growing. So when people approached my market booth, they knew pretty much exactly what they wanted on the spot. And to be honest, I had a lot of people that would buy one of each. And so I saw my sales go up pretty drastically. So it's very important if you're doing 2 different price points that they stand out from each other. And number 10, and this is one thing that I am already starting to work on for this year, make sure to find multiple outlets for your market bouquets. Last year when I was going into my first year of selling cut flowers, I only planned to sell them at 2 area farmers markets. And so I estimated that I was maybe going to have 10 to 15 bouquets that I sold each week. Well, I quickly started receiving a lot of custom orders, which I wasn't prepared for, but I am really glad that I started receiving those because I ended up having a better season than I thought I was going to have. So this year, I want to not only sell at the local farmers markets, I want to not only have custom orders, but I also want to try to find a 3rd outlet to sell my market bouquets to. So I plan to reach out to some area businesses to see if I can do weekly deliveries of bouquets to maybe like bakeries, small grocery stores, businesses like that, coffee shops, and then that will hopefully this year be my 3rd outlet to sell my bouquets at. And by doing that, I will not only increase my sales, but I will, by word of mouth, increase the exposure of my business, which will also help get me more custom orders. Okay, so that does it for the top 10 things that I learned in my first year flower farming. I hope that this helped you if it's your first year flower farming or if you're just starting to plan your 2022 growing season. I know that putting this list together helped me prepare for this year, and I'm really excited to document and share with you guys how my 2nd year of cut flower farming goes, so make sure to stay tuned for a lot more videos and a lot more updates. We'll see you soon.